Indian River Connections brings you the first source you can watch for truth on board decisions in Indian River County. The Board Report, where taxpayers and policymakers intersect. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite platform to get notified when we go live on Fridays at 7 p.m. Visit IndianRiverConnections.com for more. Sponsored by Gus Curran's House of Champions.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Board Report. I'm Joanne Binford, and this is John Karapi. We have a great show for you today. Joining us today is Laura Zorc, co-founder of Best in Ed, Dr. Karen Hiltz, Vice President at Best in Ed, and together they co-authored a book called School Board Leadership, The Right Way. Right, John?
Yeah, that sounds like a really good topic. That's what the board report's all about: school board leadership and keeping the community involved and informed on what's going on with their taxpayer money and what decisions are being made. So just want to also thank Gus Curran's House of Champions for being our presenting sponsor of the board report. The board report was developed under the umbrella of Indian River Connections, and we have other podcasts under that. To the Point podcast, our partner Mike, who's not in the producer room right now. He's out on assignment, so I'll be taking care of that. We also have Joanne Binford, Joanne does Binford Chronicles. Then we have TGI Now podcast, and we have a new podcast that just launched about a week ago called Connecting People in Places. And so that's a podcast we offer free service to organizations in the community, business owners, entrepreneurs, to come on the show and tell their story and connect their story to what they do and what they do in the community. So it's a new one. So reach out to us if you want to get involved and be on that podcast and be a guest on that one. So who else do we have?
We also have joining us today Thomas Kenny, editor-in-chief of the Sunshine Journal, and Kevin McDonald, our previous school board member. Nice. And John, education has really been an important topic around the dinner table, hasn't it?
It sure has, especially with the Department of Education getting cut there. And so we have to do it in our backyard. We have to start in community, and we have to keep people informed of what's going on. And Sunshine Journal does a great job of that. And Kevin McDonald, who was a former school board member, who really is well versed on what's going on, with their eyes and ears on the ground as well. So we appreciate them being involved as well. So it'll be a good roundtable, that's for sure.
Yeah, it definitely is. So everybody stick around for this exclusive interview with Laura Zorc and Dr. Karen Hiltz. These ladies will be diving into education and their book, School Board Leadership, The Right Way. So John, let's go to our sponsor, Gus Curran's House of Champions.
Tired of the same old workout? Come knock out your fitness goals at Gus Curran's House of Champions. Founded in 1996 right here in Vero Beach, Florida, our Hall of Fame trainers will push you to your limits and beyond. Whether you're a beginner or a pro, we have the perfect class for you, including the one-of-a-kind rock-steady Parkinson's training. So come join the fight and unleash the champion inside you. Give them a call, 772-713-1157, or go to gchouseofchampions.com.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Board Report. We have two wonderful guests on today, and that would be Laura Zorc from Best in Ed and there we go, Karen Hiltz, Vice President. Hello, ladies. How are you today?
Great. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, so together you've created a valuable educational resource called School Board Leadership, The Right Way. Laura, can you share your journey from being a mother of 4 to becoming an active education advocate?
Well, I would have never woke up and said that I would be doing this, but after having 4 children, and my oldest is 32, so I have a 12-year gap, and I had that time for a career as a forensic in forensic accounting and operations. So when I started having my other 3, I was more of what you would call a stay-at-home mom, and I realized that the funding in Florida wasn't equal when it come to our charter schools, and that's where my children were. So I really dove into the policy And I really got involved as a mom. And then I ran for school board in Indian River County, served there for 4 years. And it gave me really the backseat to looking at how our school districts are ran, which has developed into the mentorship. And I met Dr. Karen, and we started mentoring school board members across the country. And the book that we actually wrote together is based on all those questions and the problems that we're seeing in Arizona, Florida, all across the country that wasn't unique just to Indian River County. These are problems that we're seeing across the country. So we put it into a book so that we can really mentor school board members across the country.
Wow, that's really great. And Karen, you come from a military background and a career in federal procurement, and that's kind of shaped your leadership style and approach to governance in the education sector, hasn't it?
Uh-oh.
Did we lose you sound?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I can hear you now.
Okay. Well, the military does give you discipline. And so yes, I became well-versed with regards to understanding roles and responsibilities and policy. And one of the things that federal procurement does is it ingrains in you legislation, and how legislation becomes policy, and how policy become regulations with which to write those contracts. And so there's that formal knowledge and experience that I have that I bring to the table. And so I do enjoy the policy side and dealing with the law and things of that nature as well, because of my procurement experience. So yes.
Yeah. So Laura, how do you see the role of school boards involving the future, and what kind of leadership is required to meet the needs of students, families, and communities?
Well, I think the foremost, most important aspect of public education is making sure that we have elected officials that actually represent our families and our students, that are sitting on those boards, that know how to read the budget, knows how to hold these families and our students, that are sitting on those boards, that know how to read the budget.
Hang on, something's interfering. Is that who? Okay, it sounds like it's gone. Go ahead.
Okay, so I really feel that if we have an informed and a well-educated, when I say educated school board, it means really understanding what your role and responsibility is to the students that you're serving and the families that you're serving, then I think that will elevate the quality of education within our public school systems. And what we're seeing, and I know we'll probably dive into it, if we have the federal government, who we know is a large bureaucrat that's managing our funds on the federal level, if we send those dollars back to the states through block grants to the school districts, but our school boards still don't understand what their roles and responsibilities are, and the superintendent and the administrators are just the local layer of bureaucrats, we really have to get a hold of making sure that our school boards that are elected understand that it's not the superintendent, they do not work for the superintendent and the educrats within the school district, that they actually work for them. And so it's really a mind shift that we're working on right now through this book.
Have you been talking to teachers and seeing what their response is to that when you explain that to them and teach that? What's their reaction to that?
Well, I'll let Karen piggyback on this, but when we talk to teachers, and obviously teachers that are in charter schools, private schools that have left the public school system, are excited to see that we are actually training school board members how to be the leaders, because they get the firsthand peek at how these school districts and the funding's so mismanaged, but they don't have a voice. So what we're doing is we are actually giving them a voice behind the scenes to actually help us mentor school board members, so that school board members understand how to bridge the gap. We're not anti-public school. We're just about making sure that the quality of education within our school districts, that the funding's following the students, that the funding is being well spent, and that the actual community has a say in the overall landscape of the school district.
Yeah, Karen, can you expound on that?
Well, right now, teachers seem to be fearful for losing their job if they say anything. But when they have the law behind them and when they understand the policy and their role, then that gives them confidence to be able to speak out and to navigate the system. Because as Laura said, it's a very bureaucratic system. And so this allows, one of the opportunities is for teachers to understand, excuse me, that you know, there is a navigation behind all of this. And so, you know, when teachers are more aware of that and understand that, that gives them more control over what they have control over. So
is there like certain examples that you can give of areas that they're afraid to talk about or that they're struggling with?
Well, when I was on the school board, I served in Virginia, and when I was on the school board, contracts were something. Of course, Virginia is not a union state. It's a right to work state. And we explain that in the book as well. But teachers are afraid of losing their contract if they don't do what the administration tells them to do. And if they know what their boundaries are and they know what their authority is with regards to their role, then that empowers them to be more confident about managing their classroom and continuing with their contract and doing what they're being hired to do. But the loss of a contract, because in most school districts, the public school system, I shouldn't say in most, in many school districts, the public school system is the largest employer in the county. And so teachers do fear, you know, losing their job, especially if they're a single parent or, you know, struggling as it is with regards to whatever their circumstances are. And so they don't want to do anything. Another example I'll share is with regards to sports. A lot of times sports have an impact in the classroom because of the what I want to call it, the way sports athletes are taught, are treated. If they aren't given the right grade, regardless of their performance in the classroom, then teachers can get pushback on that. And teachers should be allowed to grade their students based on the students' performance.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like if you have a top football team and you're, you know, like the high school, you know, where you make all the money for the school, the athletics department for the football team brings a lot of money to the school. And if their top athlete is not doing well in school, are they promoting him to do better? Or are they letting him skate so that he can play in sports?
Mm-hmm. That's right.
I can see that being
an example. If I could, Joanne, I would love to give an example of how it's important to have a good relationship with your teachers whenever you are sitting on the school board. Because once you are elected and you take that oath and you sit at the dais, you're automatically told that you need to have a hands-off approach with the school district, because your job is to govern and it's the superintendent's job for the day-to-day. So they don't want you to get out there and actually talk to the teachers to actually learn what's going on. And that's why it's so important to actually be a parent with a child in school, in the public school, so you can actually see it yourself. But what we see is that policy, whenever you have a school board that passes really good policy, if you have an administrator or a superintendent that might not be so for that policy, it's the way that they implement it through their procedures into the schools. And so what we have when you have a really good relationship with the parents and the teachers is that you get that inside baseball that, hey, board member Zorc, it's not being implemented in the schools the way that I know that the spirit of the policy was supposed to be. You might want to take a look at this. So really having that connection with teachers is important. But as school board members, the superintendent does not want you to have that relationship with teachers. One of the biggest issues that we're hearing from teachers right now is that there might be policies that's passed by school boards on discipline, but it's not really trickling down into the classroom, because the way that it's been set up on the federal level and the state level, these schools do not want to have discipline rates, because it really goes against their scores, their ratings. And so the biggest complaint I'm hearing among teachers is they're not being supported in the classroom, especially when it comes to the discipline issues.
Right. So they have quotas set in discipline. For example, you wouldn't, if a student, they have actually race quotas as well in the classroom. So if a student was suspended too many times, they can't suspend him many more times, or they have to use other alternatives rather than give them the consequences. Is that what you're meaning as well?
Well, you might have a very disruptive student, but because they don't want that discipline on their school record, they might go ahead and just wipe it off the school, the back end of the school database, and go ahead and send that student back to the class, knowing that student's going to just disrupt the class over and over. And it might go back to like what you're talking about based on the demographics of the student, because a lot of the school gradings based on that. So it's a giant concern that we have. But I really think under the Trump administration, these things that school boards didn't really have the say on changing, they actually have someone that's going to listen to them at the federal level, so that we can change some of these things.
Yeah. What else do you guys focus on? Because I know this book isn't just for leadership, it's also for parents and community. And what kind of takeaway can the parents and the community take from this book?
Well, from my perspective, I think this is a book that is beneficial to anyone who's interested in boards or school boards, because it gives you a roadmap with which to be able to function and to understand the dynamics and the areas of interest and impact within your board. With regards to parents, this allows parents to understand what school board authority really is, how far they can dictate, mandate, or not, because we do start out with, that you do need to understand your state constitution and your state statutes. And so a lot of parents have no idea that our state constitutions and our state statutes give authority and direction and credibility to what school boards and superintendents do and don't do. So that's, my take on it.
So it helps parents to be able to navigate through the school system to make sure that their children are getting the best education, and they're able to advocate for their students more thoroughly than if they didn't understand the process or even the organization chart of the echelon of the school district.
Yes, that's exactly right. Because back in 2012, when I first started speaking out against the state standards, at the time it was the Common Core state standards that they were bringing into the school districts, I was starting to go to the school boards, and the school boards were starting to say, well, this is the state legislatures, the legislative platform that we have to accept. And then, there was another decision that was being made, and the board would say, oh, well, that's the superintendent doing it. So it's like the blame game. Nobody, whenever it's something that they're getting pushback on, nobody wants to own up to it, right? So by understanding who has that role and responsibility, you can hold that individual accountable. It might be the school board, it might be the superintendent, but no one wants to take ownership whenever a parent comes to them and it's a concern. They want to shift it on to someone else as their fault.
Right. Yeah. This is also, I saw somewhere where you guys are you doing classes online?
So we do in-person professional development. We are in the midst of rolling out a 43-week series. So it's based on the 43 chapters that's in this book. It will go step by step, and then individuals can watch these recordings at their leisure. But we do a lot of in-person professional training, and you pulled up our tour. I actually will be in Pennsylvania next week. I'm going to be giving a training up in Pennsylvania based on this. But we really tailor our trainings to whoever the audience is. For example, up in Pennsylvania, it's actually an election season, so we're going to be giving a training up there to really train our candidates what the roles and responsibilities are of a school board member, so that they can actually utilize that information as they're running as a candidate, and they'll be very well informed as a candidate. So we do both professional training on the state level. We've actually are an approved state trainer for some other states, and then we help candidates, and then we do our grassroots trainings with parent groups.
Well, you ladies have really gone far and wide. It's amazing the work that you're doing, and I love the fact that it's coming out of our little quaint family town here in Vero Beach. We have some amazing women that have done amazing things in this town, and I want to see it keep going. So I want to thank you ladies for coming on today. Thank you, Laura and Dr. Hiltz, for joining us. And while the book is intended for school board members, it also benefits candidates, like you said, parents and advocates for school choice. It helps to clarify roles and responsibilities in the structure of the school district. Did I say that right?
Yes, very well.
Yeah, so I want everybody to stick around for our next guest, Thomas Kenny, editor-in-chief of the Sunshine Journal, and Kevin McDonald, our previous school board member. So let's go to our sponsor, Gus Curran's House of Champions. Oh, actually, we're going to Warrior Shield.
Warrior Shield Foundation is here to unite, honor, and provide support for veterans, first responders, and Gold Star family members. The foundation will enable them to find the help they need through direct assistance or by connecting them with our Shared Vision Network. Using data-driven models, we provide solutions that make a long-lasting difference. We, along with our partners, are dedicated to bringing together like-minded groups and individuals who have committed to making a difference in the lives of our hardworking, everyday heroes. We bridge the gap by connecting warriors or their families with the assistance they deserve and require, such as service dogs, wheelchairs, counseling, scholarships, and team-building retreats, to name a few. You can help right now to make a difference for those who have helped and protected us all. Warrior Shield Foundation, selflessly doing for those who need it most.
It's a long way to home, but you won't take the hard road all alone. Just look to your left and look to your right. You were born to fight.
Indian River Connections brings you the first source you can watch for truth on board decisions in Indian River County. The Board Report, where taxpayers and policymakers intersect. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite platform to get notified when we go live on Fridays at 7 p.m. Visit IndianRiverConnections.com for more.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Board Report. Joining us today is Thomas Kenny, Editor-in-Chief of the Sunshine Journal, and Kevin McDonald, our previous school board member. Hello, everyone. How are you?
Hello. How are you? Can you hear me?
Sound great.
Awesome. Hi, Joanne. How are you?
I'm doing great. So what are you bringing us today, Thomas?
Well, Kevin and I got together a little bit and chatted about what's going on. One of the things that's happening is something we've been talking here for a couple of months. I would say almost 3 months, right, Kevin?
Depends on what it is.
About enrollment at the school district.
Oh, 9 months. A year.
Well, I mean, at the school board, we've been hitting it since the campaign season of last year.
Right.
And, but it's finally come full circle in the media here. A couple of weeks ago, our favorite Vero News columnist wrote about it in sort of very, he disguised what's really going on because he has his agenda. But all that to say, Kevin could probably share a little bit more about that, but he harped on the enrollment numbers declining and the money that's involved, because for every kid that doesn't show up, there's obviously money that the school district does not get. And I think he said, it came about at about $38 million. I have a feeling that's a little off, but I would say it's been about a good 1,000 students over the last 3 years to 1,200 students, if I'm not mistaken from the article. Right? Is that right, Kevin?
Well, he quoted 1,850 students private and homeschooling, and then 2,300 in charter schools who were also getting funds. So that's where he gets that. What was it? That
$38 million.
37.5 million.
Okay, the school system itself hasn't lost that many.
In fairness, you should recognize that those $9,000 vouchers are money that doesn't go to the school. The school's spending $22,000 a student. If you divide their $400,000 budget and the number of students,
400 million.
400 million, excuse me, the number of students, and they're spending $22,000 a student. So some taxpayer somewhere is saving $13,000 a student for students to go to private school or homeschooling or charter. So that's the piece of it that everyone likes to ignore, because his article is really about how do we fund the institution of public teaching without regard to the goal of instructing students and educating students.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that he said, which is partially true, is that private schools don't have to have their teachers certified by the state, which is sort of true.
Yeah,
because that only works if that teacher has 3 years of professional experience. And chances are most private schools are hiring a certified teacher somewhere. The mentoring program, for example, in the school district of Indian River County is exactly 3 years. And that's where you're getting a lot of teachers who are coming into the profession as people from other professions. We talk about this all the time. The governor has made it a thing of his to get teachers to teach in the state of Florida. It takes them 3 years to get that certification. So they go through these mentoring programs. They're working with the Florida Department of Education while they are teaching, and they're being trained. Dr. Shafty is the one who runs it over at Indian River County. So while he's technically correct, there's a lot more that goes into it.
Yeah, but also you have to interject to that point. The idea of certifying teachers, the idea of the state overseeing what's going on in the local school districts and communities, just like the idea of the school superintendent and principals overseeing what's going on in the classrooms, that is all done. We forget that is all done because they are representatives of and replacements for, and they are working for the purposes of the parents. Mm-hmm. So if a parent takes that child out of the school and takes them to a homeschooling or another school, the parent retains the responsibility and authority for being the ultimate judge of what the quality of that teaching is for their children. And so the state goes through a lot of additional steps to ensure for that parent that the level of teaching and the kind of person that's teaching them meets some kind of standard. Now, we can tell that although they do a lot of testing, when you measure it up against the math and the reading scores, that certification doesn't necessarily translate into education, unfortunately.
Yeah, and one of the big things is, and we saw this with the CSAC committee, or the family services or human services over there at the county, with the CSAC awards program, just gave the school district, for some reason, even though they were not directly participating in CSAC, getting CSAC money, they get an award for having a 96% graduation rate. But when you look at the statistics of English as a second, English language arts, which I believe in 2024, I have those here. I just got to pull them up real quick. Spring 2024. Okay, so grade 3 and grade 3 or level above. Well, wrong one. Let me pull up the right one. In 10th grade, which is the last grade they measure, spring of 2024, the state was reading at grade level or above 53% of students who in grade 10 were.
That's terrible.
Vero Beach High School, 53%. Sebastian River, 51%. Indian River Charter, 77%. So between our two high schools, we're right around 52.5, if you just, because it's a third. Sebastian's a third of the size of Indian River, I believe. And that's for grade 10. That's as high as they go. So that's grade 10 that year. Kids are graduating at 53 or above, roughly. They're right. Our county has historically sat right around that statewide number of 53, whatever that statewide number may be. Back in the day when we were 63 in 2012, the state was like right there at 67, I think, or something like that, or 65.
Wow. So that's not good at all.
No, but Thomas, don't gloss over that 77%.
Oh, and in the charter school, correct.
That is an enormous difference, an enormous difference. And if we had good press in the city, they would be writing about that. They'd be writing about why is a 50% success rate laudable, and I say that with a caveat for, I think Dr. Moore is working hard and doing a relatively good job, but that rate in the state and in Indian River County is not acceptable. 77% is barely acceptable, but that's a huge difference. And everyone in the city, everyone in the county, everyone in the state should be going to those charter schools and finding out how is teaching actually happening there.
That's a 24-point drop at Vero Beach High School and a 26-point drop at Sebastian.
That's 50% better than the schools are doing. Yeah. I mean, that's enormous.
And is the charter school have perfectly state certified teachers and following all the rules? No, but they're taking the same assessments.
But, private schools.
And that's where you're getting our grades, our numbers.
Charter schools and private schools seem to be more accountable to the parents.
Well, they are.
And education and making sure that your kids are getting a good education. And I think the voucher program is a great program because it's really put the fire under Moore's butt to figure out how to get this school to do better and keep students.
The voucher program is what you call competition.
That's right.
Competition is always good. Competition always produces improvement, and it weeds out the failures. And that's good.
And Peggy Jones said something that was really interesting. She's like, we always knew this was coming. Now it's here. At the end of the day, what are parents really looking for? That their kids perform well. It's not a matter of who's certified or what. Now, there are the standards. Okay. Charter schools are doing the same assessments, probably pretty dang close. I mean, we got the grades there, so they are. And they're doing 24 points, 26 points better on the high school level. And they're graduating people. and they're part of that graduation number. At least their kids are reading better, 2 to 1. And you have to, so they're here. It's here. And the certifications don't matter. The grades matter. Right. The grades of students, the performance, the merits that the kids come away with, that's what matters. And you can write all this stuff you want about the money you're losing and everything else. At Imagine South Vero, I wrote about this at the Sunshine Journal last year. The waiting list was 340 for a K-8. The school, the school has 800 students and it's almost at 50% waiting list.
Oh, so unlike
wow.
Unlike the local newspaper, we should offer the alternative viewpoint as well, which is
exactly
those self-selected parents who put their children in those schools are, they're selecting themselves out as more involved, potentially caring more, having more, resources, having more involvement with the children. There's a lot of personal, individual reasons which contribute to that 77%. But that notwithstanding, they got 77%.
Well, the program is good because it opens the door to those families that normally wouldn't be able to afford to try to pick another choice, to go somewhere else. It removes the wealth barrier, whereas before, without it, it was people with higher incomes that could only afford to look at the option. Now people at a lower level income can look at the option. It puts everybody more on a playing field and opens the door to a broader spectrum of children to have the opportunity for their parents to put them where they can get a better education. And I think the competition is great.
What are you actually pointing out? You're pointing out that without vouchers, the lower income families with less resources were held captive prisoners by the public education industry. And the complaint that the local newspaper has is the penitentiaries are losing some of their victims.
Well, it just goes to prove it, because now we had the school choice, right? It proves it, because now that we have,
so we have Warden of the Year. Is that what you're saying, Kevin?
It's a little bit harsh, but it really is. It's a public institution, and they're complaining that people have the option to choose their own path and not be institutionalized, for better or for worse. And rather than respect that, they trashed it with a lot of distortion and near untruths.
Well, the proof is in the pudding. First, it started out with Florida Virtual School. A lot of kids were being pulled out to do Florida Virtual School. A lot of kids were half-time school and on Florida Virtual School. Then after COVID, it just became more popular to let's get our kids out of the school system. And now you've got the voucher program, which is even better. And it's really putting a lot of pressure on the school. You guys just read the numbers. They're not very good. We should be like graduating at 9%, 90% to 95, 100% efficiency, and not this. We should nowhere be in the 60s and 50s. That's embarrassing.
50, 60 years ago, that was the norm. My brother's the only person I ever knew who didn't know how to read. And he became very successful, but on his own initiative. But everybody else came out of school. They could read, they could do math. They were educated. Now,
and people forget the vouchers.
Cursive back.
The cursive is the new code writing. But the vouchers also help out kids with special needs. Because everybody. So it's really spread wide and far. I think it's a great
and the special needs is something that I think the school system, the public school system, will cherish more, because they get a lot more dollars per student on that one.
Right. And speaking of dollars per student, when you do their math, if the school has a budget that breaks down to $22,000 per student, that they're paying taxpayer money either from our real estate taxes or from what goes to the state and comes back, or it goes to the federal government and comes back, $22,000 a student. If the state is giving away $9,000, that means that $13,000 per student is saved. That works out to, based on the math we saw earlier, $54 million worth of taxpayer funding that is not being used on those, 4,150 students.
Wow.
We save $54 million by using the vouchers. And to complain that the taxpayers are saving, that the parents are saving taxpayers money by getting a better education for their children is there's something distorted about that kind of thinking.
Yeah, well, the writer of that article just sees the glass half empty all the time and wants to point it out, but doesn't point out all the benefits.
Well, he's a government promoter.
Yeah.
Well, there are people who believe in your stuff is my stuff. You really shouldn't have any ownership of anything. I can, but you shouldn't have anything of ownership, any ownership of anything. And your entire worldview should be structured on a worldview that is outside of any standard religion. So they push their beliefs. They push the idea that your stuff doesn't even belong to you. Taxpayer money doesn't belong to them. Parents who give taxpayer money in should have no say over it. So that's the core unspoken principles that are underlying, the article, but also everything that person writes.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's funny because the cherished number in the presentation that happened 2 months ago, or two school board meetings ago. So that was the February school board meeting. Oh, there's the Sunshine Journal. Thank you, guys. But the presentation that happened in February, there was this whole thing about how the kids we're now ranked 4th, and we're reading at 63% of reading grade level or above by 3rd grade. And there was this whole push about the Learning Alliance. By the way, that's an interesting sub-story in and of itself. So in 2012, when the Learning Alliance came in, according to the FCAT scores, 3rd grade was 63. And we've now returned to that finally, 63 in 2024 of spring of 24. We haven't gotten the 24-25 numbers yet. But all that to be said, it dropped to 53 by 2015. So that 3 years of involvement, boom. It had
And why
dropped.
are we spending all that money?
And so, and the Learning Alliance was doing their own way of doing things. And one thing when Dr. Moore came in, he put everybody back on the same curriculum, or they were using different teacher developments and things like that. They were all still using the curriculum, but teacher development was completely different. And he put everybody back on the same page. He says, look, this is the way we're going to do it. And right now, the Learning Alliance funds at about $2.5 million annually, teacher salaries to teach. It's really a pass-through almost, the way it's being done. And then there's the early childhood stuff that they do before kindergarten, which is completely different. And I haven't looked entirely at that, but there are a lot of people who rave about that program. So I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt there because I haven't looked at it yet. I'm not going to shoot my mouth off in a newspaper.
So you want to see the numbers to see if it's shown any improvement.
Yeah, but I think they're doing, they're running into a lot of different things with the poorer community and the taking care of kids and the work and everything else that has to go into it. And I get it. It's harrowing when you meet someone with a child who's like 1 year old and the mother can't read. I get it. That's what they're dealing with. And I have a lot of mercy for that. And so, I understand.
Maybe they should be educating adults and leave children alone.
But when it comes to 3rd grade, we're at 63. And there's a lot of money there that they've put in every year. And it's only because Dr. Moore has streamlined everything. Now, the A's and the B schools, that's all on a curve. It's based on the performance of the state overall. So if it stays this high, next year, if the state average moves up, we got to move with it, or we're going to lose our grade levels. And
but you had mentioned, you had mentioned the Learning Alliance has drawn a line in the sand for this year of reaching a 75% reading level.
Well, I spoke at the school board meeting in March, and David Dyer's response was they had set a goal of 75%. It's on tape. It's in public record. So I'm not going to say anything he didn't say. And I was just like, I hope so. I really do. You want to see kids get smart, but at the same time, it's like, okay, let's see where it goes. In 2011, under the original FCAT, the school district was 76 reading at grade level.
See,
They
to
changed
me,
the standards from 11 to 12 and it dropped down to 63, but there were school systems in 10 and 11 that were mid to high 80s. I could show you a chart. There's 10, 12, 15 of them. We were up at 76. The state was at 74. And so we're always right there in that median for some reason. And now the state plummeted, we rose. Initially, that thing back in,
the state plummeted, we did not plummet.
Yeah, we've remained the same.
So, Thomas, are we running into a big government, local government type situation? Because the CSAC has grown exponentially from originally, 150,000 a year. Now it's got like 72 line items on it, and we're up to $3-point-something million.
$479 million. Just voted.
And is it really benefiting us? You have all these woke cities that spend tons of money on social programs, and they still have homeless people in the streets. So, is it really benefiting Indian River County?
CSAC is for children. So I hope there's no.
It's not just for children.
Well,
it's not just for children.
Services Advisory Council. So it's.
Well, I mean, it's not just for
children.
children.
I know they're funding adult programs that are, quote, teaching children.
Right.
So it's
like all government programs, you have to look beyond what the title says. You look at where that money goes, whose pocket does it end up sitting in? And in many, many, many cases, as Dozier's finding out, this money is just it's leaking out to all kinds of pockets of friends and things, and not a lot of it actually becomes anything productive.
Okay, so Joanne, let me just say this one thing. They just upped the funding for CSAC this year for 25-26 to $3.479 million. It's a 15% increase. It's announced on the Indian River Human Services or whatever Facebook page, and the day prior to that, they did a little promo marketing shot for Thrive, which was the substance abuse awareness nonprofit. That nonprofit has 2 voting members on CSAC, and they got $180,000 last year. So you've got 1 voting member on the grants committee, and you've got 1 voting member on the grant review committee, and then they had the assessment committee. There's 2 separate ones. And isn't
that like an ethics conflict there?
Totally.
Only if you have ethics.
I mean, how do you say no to funding your own nonprofit if you're on the board?
How many?
One of them's their data analyst.
How many Learning Alliance people and connected people are on the CSAC committee?
Actually, indirectly, I don't. There's nobody directly.
I thought that
there's probably Woodhouse.
Isn't
Woodhouse is a donor, and she's given about I think she's under the below 4,000 range or so, $49.99 range. If you go on their website, it goes all the way from. Look, the bottom line to the county is they're in the top tier membership, the $1 million club twice over. We've given them almost $3 million.
So do you think a better solution would probably, just for your opinion, it's not fact or anything, but if instead of spending all these $3.4 million on all these NGOs, because the students are coming from families that have less discipline in the household, people that have to work and not be home and leave their kids, if they made classrooms smaller and invested in the school system so that these classrooms could be smaller, have more teachers, have more one-on-one instruction than having 24 or 22 kids in your class with 3 or 4 of them that are disruptors. Would more education take place?
That's and here's the unspoken thing that we haven't said yet, and is definitely not in this article. There's a reason the charter school is 77, because the tolerance and discipline, they don't mess around with kids.
Right, they have the right to throw you out.
They have a moral standard, and they have a waiting list. It's like it's a privilege to get yourself educated, don't you think? Mm-hmm. And it should be the same way in the public school, but it's not. and we've talked about that umpteen times. And I think if that's the thing, the moral clarity of a lot of the private schools, whether they're religious or not, the moral clarity is based on performance, merit, and the kids have to have a place where they can do that easily. And the only place you can do that is in a disciplined classroom.
And ultimately, that boils down to principles and morals that are fixed and absolute, which is the antithema to our in the 70s and 80s, where they came up with moral relativism, where good is not good and bad is not bad, and everything is relative, to the point that now they can't define what a woman is, and yet they will fight over women issues when it's convenient, and then turn around and ignore that they don't have a definition. They're completely devoid of principles.
Yeah. So guys, we're going to have to take a break and go to the round table. All right.
That'd be awesome. I'm looking forward to talking to Dr.
We can have our guests come on and talk about this subject. I love it. So let's go to the round table, John.
Hi, Karen.
Hi, Karen.
Hello.
How are you? Happy birthday.
Happy 39th.
John, are you coming up or no? Where are you, John? John's there you are. So many people came up, I lost track. So Karen, you heard that conversation. What do you think about that?
Well, I actually wrote an article with regards to graduation rates and test scores, and it's an oxymoron, in my opinion, because you can't have proficiency rates for math and reading, etc., and have a almost 100% graduation rate. You are graduating illiterates, functional illiterates, into society, so you're setting them up for failure. And I think it's an abomination what is being allowed to happen. And I also believe, this is my opinion, based on what I have seen and researched, that test scores are being manipulated. And I think there is actual facts out there. Look at the case in Georgia from a few years back, how they skew the test scores in order to make their school look good or make their district look good. And we have lowered the bar so much that that people are accepting what is happening, and we need to begin to have policy and have school board members begin to raise the bar. We need to establish higher expectations for our students, because I'm a firm believer in that if you challenge children, they will rise to the occasion. If you can engage with them and work with them, that children want to please. And I just think we're going about this the wrong way.
Yes,
you know, it's funny. I watch the DSEG order meetings. Don't ask me why I do it. It's an exercise sometimes in futility. But all that to be said, I just remember Mershon Green talking to Dr. Moore. I believe it was February of last year, maybe January, at this one meeting, and she's going on about her friend who had two of her kids go to Florida, and they had to take remedial reading courses because they just couldn't read to the level.
Well, the news article
she was saying, in terms of the DSEG orders, she's saying these are my Caucasian friends, and I'm just like, and they came out of this school system, and probably when it was 94 or 93% graduation rate, whatever the case may be, and you're just like, what's going on?
Well, Connecticut is facing, as you saw last week, lawsuit by a valedictorian that they graduated who can't read and write.
I saw that.
And she's suing the school district.
Well, they have the most money, so.
Are you talking about the young lady from Connecticut? Where in Connecticut is she from?
Yeah.
She filed a lawsuit against the district school board because she graduated and couldn't read, but also the University of Connecticut accepted her application.
Right, and she's taking remedial reading.
And so she can go into the University of Connecticut and get a higher level degree. And I will share. I will share with you, when I taught in the undergraduate, I taught at a private 4-year institution, and we had students coming in as freshmen, and inevitably there was I would say at least a 25 to 30% student population as freshmen coming in and having to take remedial math or remedial writing.
Wow.
Why do you think that?
And so that not only that impacts when they can graduate, because it extends their graduation
How long ago was
opportunity.
that?
Why do you think that is?
That I taught from 2009 to 2013, I think.
Okay.
So
John
how
was
do you
asking
even
why.
become valedictorian if you can't read? I thought the valedictorians were like the 5.0 kids.
They are.
The 5.0.
Well, it depends. It's who they're up. It's the top student in the
Anyway.
class.
Laura, I'd like to know more about the budget, because in Florida, school boards have their own taxing authority.
Mhm.
And if you tax and there is a bucket of money coming in, we'll say $100 million coming in, but you only have so many students where you need, I'll say, 95 million. Where does that other 5 million go?
Good question.
Well, we sort of do have taxing authority, and
I can't hear you.
Oh,
I can
I-
hear you.
can you hear me?
I can't hear Laura.
Okay.
Might be
So-
air conditioner.
You have the money that comes from the state that is set per student. It's the same amount unless it's special needs. Then you have the money from local, which is the same amount. You have the federal grants. And then on the local, you have the ability to not accept that local funding. But because we're all greedy and it's someone else's money, they always take it. Now, if you go back and you watch the Indian River County School Board's meeting from last season, and I'm sorry, Kevin, I don't remember if you were on the board at the time,
I voted for the budget.
they were very excited that they weren't raising more money to come into the school district. Well, in reality, they should be giving money back to the taxpayers, because when you look at, and I'm so happy you brought this up, when you look back at 2018-19, when I left the board at 2020, our budget was right around $299 million. $299 million. We had approximately 17,300 students. You fast forward to now, last year, the budget, I believe, was $399 million. That is $100 million.
More.
And we lost almost 2,000 students.
Mhm.
We should be an A+ district. And we should be giving money back to our taxpayers. We should not be taking any more money in, because we are way over in what we're bringing in. And when you really look at what the school district is doing, you look in the general funds, and it really, when I took a look at that, they're increasing salaries, but that's not really trickling into the classrooms, because they're not improving the after school programs. They're not offering more tutoring. It's not lower classroom sizes. So it's really going into the pockets of the administrators, adding administrators. Oh my goodness, so many administrators over at that building right now. I would love to go in there and really take a look at that, the Doge, right? But when we look at that, and then we look at what's going on over with our ESE students, and Thomas, this is something I want you to do some research on. We have the Wabasso School, who is supposed to really be the school for our most significant needs of our students. It's in the oldest building. It has so many leaks and it's just falling apart. But yeah, our school board's sitting over in the Taj Mahal. We're building these new ramps over for our track players. We're redoing our facilities, but they are neglecting to care for the most neediest and vulnerable students within our school districts, and that's our Wabasso Special Needs School. And it is a shame what they're doing because they are not taking care of those students the way that they should, and they're getting the most money. They're probably getting about $33,000 a student over there, but the money is not going to those students. But one thing that you should look at, Thomas, who does not get a grade and what schools get the least attention and support? Wabasso doesn't get a school grade. That's where our special needs students are. And the ACE. The ACE is the new hub whenever students are on their phone 3 times and they get caught. They're sent over to ACE. ACE is actually a school that's supposed to be for our most,
it's called IR prep, correct?
You know, those students that are really have those challenges. Well, our school district's starting to push even our C students and our D students over to the ACE because of these mild infractions. But you got to look at what that does. It's going to elevate our school grades, right?
Yep, that's what I was thinking. They're getting rid of them.
Students over here in a building that's falling apart. We're putting our might be troubled students over into these portables, and neither of these get school grades. And we're not funding these students the way that they should be. So that is an area, that is a crucial area going on in our school district right now, and it really needs to be exposed to what's happening.
Yeah, that is terrible. But yeah,
I think he just did it.
We'll
It is very frustrating. And I'm going to thank Thomas because I typically stay out of the local politics. I'm so busy in other school districts trying to mentor other school boards. But Thomas had asked Karen and I to come over and speak, and I actually listened to the school budget hearings from the year before, and I was just blown away. And then having a grandson in Wabasso, and I went over there to pick him up, and I saw the building and the condition. It just, you know, that mama bear in me is just come up.
Mm-hmm.
That is a shame.
When you look at a budget, what are you looking for, Laura? What are you looking for in those? What items are you looking for that to just stand out, that are easy to spot?
You know, one thing that I do look at the number of administrators compared to students. When I'm looking at the number of administrators, I'm looking at, you know, what is their role in the school district or within that school. You know, there's some very important positions within our school building, so I don't want to discount that. But whenever you look at what's going on in Indian River County, I think it's a perfect segue of what that newspaper you're talking about wrote that article. It's a perfect segue into if our schools are half full.
And there are a couple, especially on the elementary.
Why are we still at the maximum amount of administrators within those schools?
Mm-hmm.
Why aren't we combining these schools? Or, you know, making better use of these schools whenever we know that we have the ACE students in a portable. And they're going to say they're not portable, but they're concrete portables. They were supposed to be temporary. And then we have our special needs students in a 110-year-old building, and we're not utilizing our facilities the way that we should be. And you know, those are 2 areas we could shut down, the ACE, and we could shut down Wabasso, and we can combine them into these underused buildings. There's So I'm just looking at the management overall. The operations is not there right now, and the money is just going out the door. And that's why we're at a $400 million budget with 14,000 kids.
I thought, though, in terms of ESC and special needs, that these kids were to be integrated into the schools at whatever level they were registered for. So how is it that they're all being shoveled over to Wabasso? Is that what you're telling me?
I'm not saying that they're being shoveled over to Wabasso. What I'm saying is our special needs students are not getting what they should be getting, especially our students at the Wabasso. The students at Wabasso are the most, have the most need, right? And those students, and I'm going to take a look at this. I'm going to start doing some public records, because when we receive federal grants for those students, those federal grants should be used for those students. It shouldn't just go into a bucket so that the school district can build, or not build, but utilize it in other campuses.
And that's what happened with ESSER funds, correct? I mean, it just went into a bucket, and now all of a sudden we had a $14 million mental health program startup.
Yeah. Well, you look at Wabasso, where we have the most vulnerable students, and every school has like the special curriculums with, like music and art and everything like that. But when you look at our special needs, who we're trying to, build a skill for them so that they can be successful, they can, work at these jobs. Would you believe that there's not even a music teacher for music therapy? There's not art. There's nothing over there for those kids that will help them, through the challenges that they're in. And it's very frustrating, because what's so frustrating about that is they get thousands and thousands of dollars a year more for those students, and they have less services when it comes to those extras. But you look over at Vero Beach High School, and there's a very nice stadium out there. There's a very nice track field that's coming up right now. All our most vulnerable students. And if we look at, are we meeting the DSEG order? I looked at the numbers at our ACE Center and at our Wabasso school. It's a high population of
Laura, let me ask you a question. Why do you think that is? What is the reason why the Wabasso school doesn't get the money that's needed to do the things that need to be done for these children? Why is that? Answer that question.
Well, I'm going to tell you, if I had to speculate right now, it's because those students don't get a school grade.
Okay.
If those students got a school grade, and a lot of those students that are over there, they come from underserved families that don't know how to advocate for their students. I would love to mentor these families.
So what's the benefit? What's the benefit of, because they don't get a grade, so they just don't care, that they just will say, okay, well, we're just going to not throw any money at that because this doesn't count again. This doesn't count for our numbers, or whatever the superintendent of the year gets for, an award for having an A grade of the district.
I'm going to say, and I'll let you speak. I'm going to say back in 2020, they were well funded and they had what they needed. Yeah. You look ahead now, they don't have the services that they should have. And when I left that school board, I was promised that we were going to build a new building for those students, and it never happened.
Karen, you jump in there.
With regards to, one of the things I would also add to what Laura said is to look at is to the title money. The title money that comes from the federal government is specifically targeted for specific use. Yes. And if they misappropriate that, then there are consequences to that. So that's something that you need to be very aware of. But with regards to the Wabasso school, I don't know that one specifically, but from my experience, there are levels of disability. And if you have a child who has an IEP or a 504 because they have ants in their pants and they can't sit still in the seat, for 6 hours a day, you have disabled schools or schools for disabled children who have what I'll call mid-level to severe disabilities. They're in a wheelchair, they're mentally handicapped, they're physically handicapped. And so that's why they don't get graded, because they can't function in the same classroom environment that your children and my children can function in. So that's part of it as well, that they don't get graded. Okay.
Yeah, it almost sounds.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, John.
It's just got to go deeper than that. It goes way deeper than a grade, that they don't get graded. That doesn't make any sense.
Well, it almost sounds like they've created an educational asylum, because like Karen's saying, I used to be a paraprofessional. I was a student aide, and one of my students came from Wabasso, and she used a little machine to talk, but her level of education, she was probably 15 years old in a 4th grade classroom, and her level of education was still cat, dog, and she didn't know many words, but they were trying to integrate her for that inclusion so that she's around other kids. But she didn't get a grade. She couldn't, because she couldn't do regular curriculum. So those are the type of kids that would be in Wabasso. And they used to take kids from Wabasso and bring them to the school to let them integrate with other kids and have that social contact and go out in the playground. I don't know if they do that anymore.
I doubt it.
Well, and my experience is that we had regional, what I'll call IDEA schools. All the children who had more severe disabilities, they all were bused to a particular location within the region. And I mean, I have a friend whose daughter was severely disabled, and she couldn't feed herself. She couldn't walk. She was in a wheelchair, but she went to public school. And that is one of the responsibilities of public education, is that they are constitutionally required to provide a public education for all children. And IDEA, Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act at the federal level, is what supports the severely disabled to be able to attend public school. They're one of the supports, I should say.
So can and I know that we're running out of time, but I do want to make mention that one of the promises that was made to the school board when we hired Dr. Moore, because he had a background that he worked with our special ed students, and he worked with our students that are at ACE. And he promised the board, and you can go back and watch it, that his goal was to shut down ACE, because he was going to make sure that every child had what they needed to return back to the schools. But over the last 4 years, what you look at and I do want to note that some students will not be able to go back into the mainstream just because of violence and things like that. So I'm not advocating for every student to go back, but when you look at the numbers from 2019 to now, the ACE is actually busting at the seams, because they're sending so many students over there. So if you are going to send the students over there, let's not just send them over there to house them away from the general population. Let's send them over there because we really believe that these are the kids of hope, and we're going to take that extra time to mentor these students and make sure that we help them in these smaller classrooms have that education, and we're not just shoving them over there to get them out of our general population so that we can raise our grade. And for me, my perception right now is, I have some concerns of what's going on right now.
Isn't ACE is always supposed to be a temporary place, correct?
Yeah.
1 month, weeks. I never thought it would be a permanent place for some students.
Yes,
That's
it's
the
sad.
alternative center, right?
Yes.
Yes. It is sad because some students get over there and no matter how hard they try, they cannot get returned. So it's a situation that if we had a board majority, it should be something that needs to be investigated. Same thing with Wabasso, what's going on with our special needs. We need to investigate what's going on with our at-risk ACE students.
Relative to the budget stuff that you mentioned, which I think was correct, and although we didn't raise our rate per se, the school got a lot more money because the assessed values, the real estate have gone up.
That's right.
One of the reasons we didn't have there was no justification for raising the millage, but and I was not there long enough. I went through the end of the process, was not there long enough to spend a real deep dive into it. However, David Dyer, who's got an enormous amount of experience with financials, turning around or liquidating large companies, et cetera, he made a commitment that he was going to use that expertise and he was going to do that deep dive. And I'm hoping and anticipating that he will do just that. He will surface some of the things and guide Dr. Moore on some of the things that may be being overlooked, or some of the things that may be misspent funds, so that we might be able to, particularly since we continue to shrink, we need to start looking at recovering some of those dollars and not just keep raising the budget with fewer students.
Well, my whole thing is, if you're going to take the money in, it needs to go to the students, and I'm not seeing it going toward the students that are the most at risk. It's going a lot into our salaries and our administrators. And I know that I'm not speaking very popular right now, but the whole fact is that the superintendent works for the board. So this isn't, me blaming Dr. Moore for this. It's because we need a board that actually gets in there and does their research and holds him accountable. And I hope that David Dyer does what you're saying, Kevin, but he's really going to have to understand what's going on so that he's not just told what, to tickle his ears, but he's actually doing the research and he's listening to the parents and the teachers and the principals who will tell him the truth if he gets out there and he talks to them.
Right. And a shout out to Jackie Rosario, who is a pit bull in terms of research and does her homework several times over. She knows cold what's going on and what she's talking about, and she fights hard for it, because there is that stream with 2 or 3 people voting against her, a stream of people that want to fight her agenda, which is just a student and parent-based agenda. But she does a great job. She's very knowledgeable. And if anybody watches or attends the board meetings, you're going to see what a fantastic job she does. Look to her, and hopefully, I think she and Dyer might be developing a relationship, and hopefully they can work together to do some really board level kinds of things. They need to research. They need to know what's going on. They need to. Moore does a great job, but you still need to oversee what he does, what the school district does, and help him be better. We've got him. We've got him. We got to help him be better.
We'll see what happens.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
All right, guys.
Laura, I'm going to have to call you and figure out where to start on that subject matter.
All right. Get on it, Thomas. Breaking news. Sunshine Journal.
I
think it's been
honestly
broken.
think we're going to uncover some things here. And I do want to talk to you about this because it's something that needs to be uncovered, because as long as it's staying in the dark over at the administration building, nothing's going to be done. But I do agree with Kevin. Jackie is a fantastic school board member, but unfortunately, Jackie is a minority right now, and they're going to do everything possible to shut her voice down.
Right.
Yeah, I wonder if the Pasca is aware of the situation at Wabasso, because he's a doctor, and I just wonder if he knew the in-depth of what's going on, of what you're stating here. Maybe he'll watch the show and it'll put a fire under his little butt to investigate it as
It'll
well.
put a fire in his stethoscope.
Yeah, his stethoscope.
I know he's a great man. He cares. He's
is.
a busy doctor. And even if he and Jackie get on fire, they need someone like David Dyer to be a person of reason, to listen to reason and not be prejudiced against the decision.
Right.
And with his voice of reason and his intelligence and his skill set, he could make a difference, and they could really, do some of this research, know what's going on, and raise the level and the performance of the district.
Maybe if Dyer took a trip to the Wabasso school with Dr. Posca, and not maybe, even with Jackie Rosario, and they just did a walkthrough, maybe at the suggestion of the citizens at the next board meeting.
I was at their graduation. It's very impressive and very touching to see the students that they have to deal with and what those students struggle to accomplish. It really is touching.
So my biggest complaint right now, and I know the services aren't there that should be there, but it's very evident. You have the Wabasso students in a 100+ year building that is constantly under repair for leaks and all the deterioration, while we have these other buildings that are half utilized. So let's move. And not only on top of that, you think about a parent that lives in South Vero has to drive all the way to Wabasso. These facilities, like our Wabasso school and our A school, they should be central. Just like our school district is central, they should be central to parents, so that if you live in North Sebastian and you have to drive your child to the A Center right behind the Vero Beach High School. So, it's problematic, even the location of where these students are, but no one is paying attention to that because it's not sexy. It's not one of those things they want to look at. They want to look at these sports players and things like that.
It's all by design to do that. That's to keep the parents from having to struggle and take them halfway across the county, and they already got the kid in the wheelchair already. It's all by design to keep people.
Well, she said it. It's
It's all on purpose. It's that there's nobody wanting to try to innovate that situation because they want it to be that way on purpose. That's it. It's really what it comes down to. And
everyone loves Mother Teresa, but they wouldn't hang out with her for a day and do the work she did.
You might want to do some research about Mother Teresa too.
I'm not going to go there.
I would use her as an example, to be honest with you. So go down that rabbit hole too. But it's all by design.
I speak more colloquial, John. Don't worry.
I'm just being honest. We're authentic here. We're authentic.
Let's stay on schools, not world health.
Yeah, exactly.
But they do want to refurbish Pelican Elementary, I understand, for the new public classical school.
Yes.
Right? That they want to open.
Refurbishing they're going to do, but yeah, it's being rededicated.
Rededicated to public, because their whole motivation behind that is to keep kids in the public education system, to keep the dollars in the system. That's their whole motivation behind that.
Well,
that's
all right.
It's
compete though, and Pelican is 50% full, which speaks directly to what Laura's been saying. Pelican, and then there's another one out there too as well.
Sebastian Middle or Elementary School.
Yes. It's 50.
The Indian River Academy down in the Highlands. I mean, I could start going through some of these schools.
Is that a 50?
What's that?
Indian River Academy's down at about half full too. It's right by my house.
Yep. So we have tons of schools we have some schools that are max capacity. There's waiting lists like the Osceola. All our magnet schools are at max capacity. And then we have other schools that are doing a really good job, like Glendale Elementary and things like that, are where parents who can't get into our magnets are actually choosing schools like that. to send their kids. So, but we do have schools that we could be making better use of, and we could be making better use of the way that we're spending our operations funds, because we don't need to be having a principal, assistant principal, the cafeteria workers, the custodians, and everything else that comes with a half full school, right? We should be more diligent on how we're spending our money and making sure that those dollars that we do spend go to our students and not for our administrators and just for the sake to say that we have 23 public schools in our county, right?
That's right.
80% capacity for those of you here is operating at even. So anything below 80 is at a loss. You know, 3 schools at 50%, they're just losing money on the daily.
Well, and if they're not functioning at 80%, they're also losing teachers, because your FTEs won't let you,
Correct.
it determines how many teachers you have on that campus.
I do think it's wise for them, though, to turn to try, because that's what, as a good school board member, you always have to be innovating. And the way that you innovate is you look at your market and you look at what your market demand is. And if our market is saying we don't want our 5th graders to go into a massive middle school like Storm Grove Middle School where my kids went, which we loved, which has almost 1,000 students, that is really a big step for these students going from 5th grade from a really small 300 size elementary school into 1,000 student middle school. So I do think it's smart what the school board has decided to do with taking that, using that model from K through 6 or 7 like they're doing. So that is very innovating, and I think that's encouraging. So if I could leave on a positive.
Well,
Yeah, the K-8's awesome.
That's been the theme in the beginning of the year, K through 8. It's time to
innovate.
So, I mean, so it's a theme, but it's also, again, another one of these where you get this buzzword that they use. Like I agree with you, Laura, but at the same time, it's all that buzzword stuff. Oh, we're going to innovate now. We got to adjust. Instead of doing this 5 years ago and being ahead of the curve, it's like, oh, now we got to react and we got to go, oh, now we're going to innovate because now we don't have enough kids. So
but you have
an idea that's been talked about for 3-4 years.
That's what I mean.
All of a sudden, you have to recognize that the reason this is happening, vouchers. The article that said that spending money on non-public education isn't education.
There you go.
His complaint about competition is exactly why we have a classical school, exactly why they're going K-8, exactly why Dr. Moore is doing new and innovative things, because competition through the voucher system is making it necessary, and we get better as a result.
You're right, because they didn't see this coming. They didn't see it, so it's like, oh, now we have to adjust. Now we have to.
Well, the thing is, they didn't care enough before.
100%.
Well, and this is another case in point, in that the government is always reactionary, isn't it?
Yes.
When your money comes free, you don't worry much about things till you have to.
Yeah,
that's right.
Well, and this is what scares me about this article, because basically what he's asking for here is a regulatory framework on homeschooling in private schools, much like they're trying to do right now in Illinois. And where Illinois is saying, basically, if you don't follow our regulatory framework, homeschoolers, your kid has to go back to our public schools.
That's right.
Well,
And that's what they're, that's what I.
That's because Chicago is doing so
article.
good with a less than 20% reading at grade level rate.
I think Chicago schools are like Baltimore schools, aren't they? 0% proficiency.
I did the research
Inner
last
city?
year.
Yeah, Baltimore City.
Last year they were at like 50. Chicago was like about 18% reading proficiency.
I think inner city, when you talk about Baltimore City, they have 0 proficiency at all levels. I think Chicago, the city of Chicago, is on par with that.
Well, you don't have to read if all you do is sign a welfare check.
Can I say that this is the time that if you, and I think that every parent should put their child in the learning environment that best fits them. But if you feel like that you are trapped in your traditional public school and you do not have a way out, I would encourage parents to go to www.stepupforstudents. Right now is the time for you to fill out your application so that you can receive your education savings account. They're not vouchers here in Florida, they're education savings account. And you can use that as a parent to homeschool. You can send your child to a private school. If you decide to send your child on the other side of the county in another traditional public school, you get transportation funding. So the ESAs here in Florida are the best in the country. And now is the time for the application period, and parents should go there and fill it out. And even if you decide not to use it, go ahead and fill it out, and because there is a deadline that comes with that.
Laura, was that www.stepupforstudents.com?
I'm going to say .org. Give me a second.
I wanted to post it up there.
Okay.
So,
but they are the state organization that actually manages the application and the funding for the state of Florida. There's 2 in the state, but Step Up is the one that I'm most familiar with. So it's stepupforstudents.org. And
okay,
so
families.
And if they want more information, they can go to the Florida Department of Education under the Family Empowerment Scholarship, and they can read what the requirements and everything are with regards to applying for that too.
Because here in the county, I believe we have a couple of new private schools that are opening, and these new private schools do take the education savings account funding. So I just really encourage, put your child where you think that your child's going to be the best educated.
That's right.
All right, guys. Well, we have to wrap it up. Thank you for joining us here at the Board Report, and thank you to our special sponsor, Coran House of Champions, and of course, our wonderful guests that we had today, Laura Zorc, Dr. Karen Hiltz, Thomas Kenny, and Kevin McDonald. John, do you want to close it out?
That's it. We appreciate you guys coming on. Hopefully we'll have you back on again soon. We love the input and everything that you guys bring to the table. And, hopefully this will bring more light to what's going on with all these boards and where these taxpayer money's going, and find out where it's going. Tune into the Board Report every Friday night, 7:00 live. Appreciate it, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, John.
Bye.
Joanne.
Indian River Connections brings you the first source you can watch for truth on board decisions in Indian River County. The Board Report, where taxpayers and policymakers intersect. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite platform to get notified when we go live on Fridays at 7 p.m. Visit IndianRiverConnections.com for more. Sponsored by Gus Curran's House of Champions.